Okay, so welcome, Reed McCord, to this episode of Future Foods Interviews. Reed is the ex VP from Impossible Foods, and he's started up a new company called First Bites, which is offering a solution to a problem that I didn't really know existed. And it's going to be interesting to find out more about that problem and how First Bites addresses it. So, Reed, welcome. And can you just introduce yourself a little bit and kind of tell us about your journey, perhaps from your time at Impossible Foods to founding First Bite? What what pulled you into this space in the first place?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, I started my career at Impossible Foods. I was literally the second business team hire at Impossible. So I was there a couple years before we had a product and revenue and did 15 different jobs over 10 years at Impossible. And Impossible was an incredible journey. It was, we were commercializing novel ingredients like heme protein. We built a novel product. We built our own manufacturing. We launched initially in food service, and we were all in on this sort of away from home food service world for the first 5 years of the business. And we were able to build a sort of a couple hundred million revenue top line business in the US in a couple years. And so I ended up running strategy and biz ops, and a lot of that was helping decide where to bet, where to make investments. We called it revenue management. So where should we spend money on sales or marketing or new products to help grow the business as efficiently as possible. And so, we were able to hit that big revenue by having a great product, by being really good at earned media and PR, but also just taking lots of shots on goal. And so a lot of my job was focusing on how do we get our product in front of as many food service operators as possible, get them to consider it, purchase it, get it on the menu, and how do we optimize the different, we would call them sales and marketing motions. So it could be send someone in the door, pay for an ad, send an email out. How do we optimize those different investments, trade shows, brokers to grow efficiently, and spending that time growing the business in the food service space was probably the fastest growing food service product launch ever. Really got me obsessed with this problem of scaling in food service, and so founded First Bite after 10 years of that, and we're all in on this sort of food service go to market problem.
Okay, and by food service operator, you mean restaurants, right?
Yeah, so food service, the easiest way to define it is food away from home versus food at home. So retail is you buy at the grocery store and you cook it at home. Food service means restaurants and bars and cafes, but it also means college and university and K through 12 and hospitals, and a lot of people will also say like convenience is part of food service, or at least the prepared food side of convenience. So in the States, it's almost 60% of consumer food spending is away from home. So it's actually a bigger category than the retail space. I don't know how that is in the UK.
Right. Okay. And Impossible Foods is one of the success stories in this space, isn't it? So they, and I suppose part of that success is exactly what you're talking about, sort of getting the product in front of or into these places, into these restaurants and bars and universities and schools and that sort of thing. So how did I mean, what was the process of doing that, which is that's what you were involved with, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think Impossible Foods is it has this sort of Impossible and Beyond really have this reputation as the probably built the biggest revenue businesses and had some of the best products in the space, and they took very different paths. Beyond went to retail first, Impossible went to food service first, and it's maybe worth just explaining a little bit about what the process of selling into food service actually looks like. So, we'll probably talk about this. The advantage of food service, the reason that we chose that go to market strategy is people try new things in food service when there's 30 things to choose from and there's curation versus in retail when there's maybe 30,000 things in a supermarket and there's not necessarily curation. And so it can be really influential in terms of driving behavior change and getting people to try new things. But the go to market in food service is fairly convoluted. So fundamentally, the way that it works is manufacturers, could be Impossible Foods, it could be General Mills, they make a product, and because restaurants are very spread out, they usually sell that product to a distributor like Cisco or US Foods or any number of the sort of independent distributors that are out there. And those distributors actually sell to restaurants, and they do that last mile job. But they don't share any data on who's actually buying your product. So you don't get attribution, you don't transact directly with restaurant operators. And because of that, it's really hard to optimize your go to market because you don't really know, I made this investment at a trade show and it connected to this specific sale. The sale actually goes through these distributors, and so there's lots of intermediaries. And there's sort of another challenge, which is there's, unlike in retail where maybe 50 people are decision makers for all the major retailers, it's like 50 buyers who matter. It's like 1.5 million different operators, this long tail of operators that all make their own decisions. And so it can be really inefficient to research them, to try to connect with them and sell to them, especially without technology.
Mm.
So First Bite, we worked at Impossible. We built some really innovative playbooks for going to market, and we closed something like 50,000 food service operators. But First Bite, we founded it to really go after this solution for all manufacturers. So couple steps. We assemble data on literally every food service operator out there. So we're crawling millions of pages on the public web, including the websites of every restaurant operator. We assemble data on the commercial, restaurants and bars, but also the non-commercial space. And then we don't worry about insights at all. Like we could theoretically tell you that kombucha is growing in Houston or some insight like that, but we focus on the workflow. So how do we use that data to help manufacturers actually get in touch with and connect and sell to restaurants? So we've built a food service, vertical specific CRM that doesn't require data entry because every customer is already in it. We've built forecasting where before you've talked to any operator based on their menu and their traffic, you can project the revenue opportunity based on your products. The ability to find the decision maker, their contact information, and run very personalized outreach email to those folks. And then, those things start to become really powerful when used in combination. So you can run really interesting filters. Like I want to look 200-mile radius of New York, look for every operator with lots of Instagram followers that's not in my CRM, that's expected to buy at least $10,000 of my product, and send them a very personalized offer or message or sample to consider my product, all with lots of automation.
So is this for companies who want to avoid going through the distributors because they can contact the
Yeah,
restaurants themselves? Is that
that's a good.
correct?
That's a good. Yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions about distributors. So distributors technically buy your product and they technically sell it to restaurant operators, but they do not help you grow. So let's pick let's say you make hot honey. One of our customers is Mike's Hot Honey. So uh, they will sell to a distributor, and that distributor might have their own private label hot honey brand. They might carry a couple other hot honey brands. So they don't have much incentive. And they also will have 200,000 other products. They don't have much incentive to help any one of their suppliers grow. And so it becomes your job as Mike's Hot Honey to reach out to pizzerias and operators and let them know that you exist and promote your product. And even though you don't actually truly make the sale, you tell them where they can buy it and you influence the sale. And so every manufacturer invests in growth, even though they have to deal with this sort of distribution piece. They can't rely on the distributors to drive growth for them.
Okay, but I suppose they did a good job for Impossible Foods because Impossible Burgers are on almost every menu in restaurants in the US, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we go back and look, like how did we build hundreds of millions of revenue business in food service? and you sort of interview a fair cross section of the folks that built that business, very few of them would say, "Yeah, distributors just did that for us," right? Like I'd say what made Impossible, and not everybody can copy the Impossible story, because some of what Impossible was able to harness was the novelty of being the first one of the first products that's this like raw ground beef that changes color when you cook it, and this story around this second wave of plant-based products. But also we had basically ad like PR, so we didn't pay for any ads. We could just say we launched a new version of the product and we would get front page billing in the Wall Street Journal, right? So we had the ability to really just, because we were first and early, to really influence the get a lot of eyeballs on the product and influence the sales process. And we still did what inefficiently what First Bite helps folks do efficiently, which is we really had an operator flywheel. So we had a lot of people on the ground getting our products in front of as many operators as possible, and then letting them influence each other. We would focus on winning really sort of credible small chains, small regional chains, and influential chefs, and then let other operators look at that and kind of take a page off that, and launch based on seeing that sort of sales progress.
Yeah. So I suppose also though at the beginning there was some negative press aimed towards innocent foods, impossible foods, and Beyond Burger as well. So I mean, how did this affect your early progress?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I believe all press is good press. I'm not a
Okay.
PR expert. I think there were incredible people working on PR at both Impossible and Beyond. Rachel Conrad at Impossible, definitely got as much attention as possible and tried to keep it as positive as possible. But the fact that there's tension between plant-based and the vegan community and the the canonical like American meat eaters only created interest in trying these products, and we put us in conversation around the dinner table or at the food service operators table. And so I think ultimately, like, a little bit of negative press didn't hurt. I think occasionally there was some negative press that was objectively not fair or alarmist, but generally it probably helped. Any attention is good, and I think that's even harder now. It is not easy and I shouldn't say easy. It is not easy now to get press about a plant-based food launch, for example.
Yeah. So, would you say that the impossible food secret to success is that they went directly to the restaurants rather than directly to retail? Because Beyond Burger has struggled a little bit more, haven't they?
I mean, both brands have built real businesses. Beyond, obviously, as a publicly traded company with massive investor expectations, it is hard, of course, to uh, it's hard to have all of your financials out there in the press. And I think the food service playbook of you know of going after operators is the right way to launch for most folks, because again, you get that curation. It's where people try new things, and you also get a lot more shots on goal. So when you launch in retail, it's almost like sort of buying real estate. Like, you get a spot on the shelf, you often have to pay for it, and then you have to invest separately to try to get people to buy your product. When you win an operator, I always say to customers, like, don't invest in a billboard, don't spend money on marketing, just win more operators,
Mm.
connect with more food service operators, and get on menu there. Because it ultimately, like, Impossible is maybe a good example of this. When COVID came, we realized we needed to be in retail because the food service space was going to change, and we were able to build a almost $100 million retail business in a year because so many people knew of our product. We had that pent up demand and awareness that we were able to build in food service.
Yeah. So, So was it difficult to win the operators when you first started? I mean, was there much competition out there? Because I suppose they didn't want too many products that were plant-based foods. They probably thought that they'd be a hard sell, I suppose.
Yeah.
And so was it hard to win the operators in the beginning?
Yeah, I would maybe answer that just from the perspective of even today, there is a lot of white space in the food service operators, world. So if you think about the market, 25% of operators are major chains like Burger King and Starbucks, and we closed deals with those two businesses at Impossible. It took a really long time. It can take years to close a major operator, and they're often picking one or two things to put on their menu and they're testing it. But the other end of the spectrum is what we would call the long tail. 75% of operators are small regionals, mom and pops. They're neglected because the workflows are so intensive to find a decision maker, connect with them, get them a sample, those types of things. They're often neglected by manufacturers, and there's still a lot of opportunity to go build relationships with those types of operators. There's hundreds of thousands of them, and so I mean, I think that's the big opportunity is going to be for any future food type product, right? Any new product that makes sense for food service is going to be these small regional fast moving decision making type operators.
Okay, but obviously it's a lot more useful to get an operator like Burger King on board than it is some small operator in the Midwest.
It could be, yeah. I think, if you're selling to Burger King, your entire business is going to have this binary flip based on the marketing team and a culinary person at that operator. Do they want you or do they not want you? And it's terrifying to build a business around a single customer that can make or break you. You also have very little leverage. And so you're going to end up making a much lower margin with one sort of major customer as opposed to the smaller operators that are out there. And then it's hard to get better at selling to one major manufacturer. So, one thing that we talk a lot about is like, unlike the retail sales process, the food service sales process, you should be experimenting. Like a lot of our customers will run campaigns where they're reaching out to 200 to 500 operators every couple weeks. They're trying different messaging. They're going after different operator types, really like specific sub segments. And every time they iterate, they get better at selling. They learn from their targets. They try different sub channels. And so that continuous feedback of iteration around, matching a product to a market ultimately creates a lot of value for folks. And if you're just going to bet everything on one customer or a couple customers that you could lose, it's really hard to build a great business that way.
Okay, so the point of first bite, I suppose, is to have more control over where your product is sold into, because when you sell it to a distributor, they just have a broad stroke approach, and and so they try everybody. So you don't know where your product is, and you can't monitor it. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. So no matter what, you're going to sell to a distributor, but in terms of influencing the growth of your product and food service, First Bite is we're helping with the workflows that people do without software, which is connect with operators, potential customers, as efficiently as possible, identify them, access the decision maker, and influence their decision. So all of the little workflows and tedious jobs associated with doing that at scale can be done much more efficiently with First Bite.
So you'd still be working with distributors, or
You'd still sell to a distributor, and then you'd use First Bite to influence operators to order more from those distributors, driving your growth.
okay. So you'd have the distributors who are delivering the product, but you would speak directly to the operator, the kind of food service operator, to sort of influence them to contact the distributor to get the product from them. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. And so, one of the things you can do in First Bite is I mentioned this, is you can find the exact decision maker at operators at scale automatically, and then directly reach out to them and tell them about your product, and even generate offers and say, if you buy 50 cases of my product, we'll give you some sort of incentive.
Okay.
And that is fully run inside the First Bite platform. And so it usually a campaign like that, if you were to do that, the old school way, like researching operators to find who's got a burger and researching each one to find who the decision maker is and writing emails to all of them, you're talking maybe you can do 20 a day. And we've changed that to 500 an hour.
Okay. Okay. So this is, and so you said that First Bite is a product that you wish existed when you were at Impossible. So what was the actual lack that was there at Impossible that you think would have been improved by this product?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, a number of things. I think, you know, the number one piece is we had a team of 30 or 40 people reaching out to and connecting with operators, and they did a lot of really inefficient workflows. I would almost work up from the like, what is the intern doing, right? At an organization is they're researching, opportunities. They're just like I was saying, finding decision makers, finding their contact information. Uh, all of that work sort of goes away. We're able to say, here's every potential customer you could sell to, and enable you to sort of automatically connect with them. So at Impossible, we had a little bit of data, but we did some very inefficient workflows, and so this is really an extension of some of those playbooks that we built at Impossible.
Okay. I suppose when when Impossible was a startup, there was lots of people, like you said, that you had many jobs, that
Yeah.
you were wearing many hats, and so you must have learned many lessons at your time at Impossible. This is one of them. Were there any other good lessons that you learned that you are applying now in your new business?
Yeah, yeah, I would say, I mean, we probably learned this too slowly, but just customer empathy, right? Figuring out how do you tell a credible story about how you're going to solve a problem that your customer is experiencing. So it's really important to learn how a food service operator's business works. We see sometimes customers that aren't mature in the food service channel. They really want an operator to think about their product like they do. But it's important to think about, okay, what is an operator dealing with? Low margins, high food costs. They need to bring new people in the door. They need to create experiences that cause those people to repeat and come back. And so it's really important to have that sort of operator empathy and build that into your sales process. And we learned that over time at Impossible, and it made us a lot better at selling. Another one is just like focus on having a great product. Impossible was all in uh, on investing in R&D and investing in manufacturing quality. And we apply the same thing at First Bite, which is, most of the money we spend is on developers and machine learning engineers, and making a product that sells itself, where we can just demonstrate, look at this workflow. It's like magic. I think another thing at Impossible, just like value of a mission. It would be a lot easier for us to build less transformative software, right? Where we say, you know what, the status quo of how the industry works is what it is, and we're just going to build software as a layer that doesn't try to change anything. But because we're focused on reinventing the way that manufacturers are able to reach out to operators and connect with them and transact with them, and there's a lot that we want to change about how the industry works, that helps us attract talent that's interested in having an impact. And it's a better, you fundamentally you get better people, and we saw the same thing at Impossible, which is like people that are motivated by sort of building something bigger than themselves and changing the way something works, that are maybe frustrated by how inefficient something is. They just tend to be really good and really fun to work with. And so I've
Yeah.
certainly built that into First Bite. I think some of the things we weren't great at is like, we try to do everything ourselves at Impossible. We're very vertically integrated. You see that a lot. It's like build your own manufacturing plant. uh, build your own marketing, don't really partner with anyone, like the full vertical piece, and it's just hard to do that well. And so we've tried to be a lot more collaborative and build relationships with brokers, for example, and distributors, and help our customers connect with each other. And I think that's something I've maybe thought of a little bit differently. I also think that like the first wave of plant-based companies created massive expectations. So if you think about um, at Impossible, we're probably the fastest growing food service launch outside of maybe a new Coke or Pepsi product of all time, and it wasn't good enough. There's a bit of a gut punch, right, to say, okay, wow, we doubled in the last 4 months, but our goal is to completely replace animal farming. And I think it's hard to win when you create those types of expectations. It's easy to disappoint your investors as well. So I've tried to orient. I mean, First Bite grew 50% in Q1. Our revenue grew about 50% in Q1. It's like we have to take some time and celebrate that. It's huge. And so trying to change that a little bit.
Yeah. I was going to ask that question because but I suppose back in sort of 2019, there was an awful lot of money going into this space with a great
Yeah.
deal of expectation. And like you said, there was a lot of, the kind of products themselves maybe weren't meeting the expectation that was set for them, and that bubble burst. But you say that Impossible grew uh, really, really big, but not necessarily to the expectations of the investors. Is that right?
I think that's right. Yeah, and I think sometimes the headlines are these businesses have failed, right? And that's not really how I look at it. I think they will survive. I think they're big, valuable brands, and Impossible and Beyond, and some of these other players that have kind of gotten into that 100 million plus revenue scale. They will continue to make their products better. They will continue to grow. However, from a sort of consumer perspective, they figured out how to get on menu and get trial, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to drive distribution and sell to more operators and those types of things. But they didn't figure out how to create more of those types of consumers that are willing to pay more for a product that's as good or maybe slightly worse than the product from animals. And that's fundamentally uh, I think a change and transformation that'll probably take a lot of time.
So are you disappointed perhaps that the amount of meat that was being eaten hasn't reduced, even if these products have become more popular, these kind of meatless products have become more popular?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I haven't followed this as closely as maybe I should have over the last 4 years, but I would say uh, if you look at beef, right, which you know, if you just look at beef, there are less cows than there were 10 years ago, right? There is a reduction in beef, but it's really incumbent on Impossible Foods and anyone making a product to go get that product out there and win. So, I'd love to see these companies be successful, but they sort of have to earn it, right? It goes back to that sort of like consumer and customer empathy perspective. They have not yet built a product that solves, the framework that I think is really helpful that anyone with a future of food type product uh, should be focused on is, why do consumers and customers try my product? Why do consumers and customers repeat my product? And so Impossible Foods and Beyond created novelty, and they've sold billions of burgers, right? Uh, they got people to say, I want to try this product. And those people were maybe willing to pay double, right? And the cultured meat folks, they have an opportunity to create novelty as well, right? That's exciting. But the why they repeat piece is like, what is the value that we're going to deliver to our consumer and our customer? That there's still some work there. There's certain consumers and customers that are willing to pay more for something that, just if you look at nutrition or taste, is equivalent to the animal product. And so there's maybe 5%, 10% of consumers, which is a lot, that are willing to to pay twice as much or pay more for something that is as good or slightly worse. But ultimately, there needs to be products that solve that. Why should I repeat? Why should I make this part of my routine for more and more of the population?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's hard to say disappointed. I think I like having worked on it for 10 years. I certainly want to see these products be successful, but I think, you know, it's also, it would be helpful. I think it'd be really good for the industry to sort of align on that as the problem space. It's like you have to create a product that solves that problem.
Yeah. I think you're right. Beef eating has reduced, but it's been replaced more by chickens than by plant-based food, perhaps.
Yeah, and if you're laser focused on emissions, chicken is more sustainable. So it just depends on the lens. That's probably a good thing from a methane perspective.
Yeah, yeah. And also, do you think, as a result of companies like Impossible and beyond, that plant-based that the adoption of plant-based foods is more common now? Are there more flexitarians in the US than there used to be? I know that in Europe it's increased, and in the UK it has. I'm not sure about the US.
Yeah, I haven't been tracking the latest data on those sort of groups. I think I know that there are a lot of flexitarians, and at least for me, my consumption of Impossible Burger is not really like an identity. It's just a thing that I choose to eat alongside of. I go to a restaurant and I see an Impossible Burger and I go for it, or like I'm a big fan of the nuggets. There's plenty of plant-based products that I eat and consume, and uh, I don't really bring back to like a this is me choosing to make a sacrifice. It's in the
Yeah.
routine.
I think that's right, isn't it? It's given consumers more options. So, they could easily choose a chicken burger or an Impossible Burger, but it's not as big a deal as it used to be because before in perhaps sort of 10 years ago, the only other option was a kind of nut cutlet or something, which was the only vegetarian option. But now
Yeah.
there's real options. So do you think we are in a better place now as far as as far as consumer acceptance of plant-based food?
I think we're in a better place. I think the sort of adoption cycle is maturing. I think there's a meritocracy around the best products sort of winning out, and so anytime you see like a flood of products driven by investor money, you're going to have sort of these moments where a bad product that doesn't deserve it ends up getting tried by a consumer, and that changes their sort of like perception of the whole space. And so slowly you're seeing the products that people actually want to buy on an ongoing basis be what's in front of the consumer. And so I think that's healthy for the space. And I would answer that like, are we in a better place from a like, if you're a food manufacturer and you want to connect with operators and get your product in front of them, that's the other thing that's totally transformed. Like manufacturers have so much more control they have in terms of connecting with operators and scaling in food service. So anyone with a new product versus 5 years ago or 10 years ago should be able to find that menus have gone digital, restaurants have gone digital. It's possible to really efficiently connect, identify operators, connect with them, uh, and influence them to put your product out there and get it in front of consumers. And so I'm certainly biased, but I think that is good for the space as well. It's sort of like maybe listeners of this podcast who are working on future food products, they're doing a lot of hard stuff. They're probably doing basic research and R&D and figuring out, building a pilot plant, scaling up a new product. I see that they often underestimate the job of selling into an old school channel like the restaurant space. And so even Impossible, we spent 30 or 40 million dollars to get to just our first draft of a product. And by the time we were manufacturing it, we had one salesperson. And so we totally underestimated, we fixed that, but we totally underestimated the job of building a real business out of all of that front end investment. And so I think the fact that there are tools like First Bite, that's partly why I started the business is to catch these anything good coming you know, out of this innovation that is going to be transformative. It's like, let's catch those technologies and help them scale and get in front of consumers as efficiently as possible, because that's the point.
Okay. And going back to First Bite then, what have been some of the big challenges in starting this company? Because
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting that you chose a technology company rather than another food company, but I suppose you spotted the niche and you feel it. So what have been some of the challenges in kind of
Yeah.
building this company?
Well, I will say I can't complain because my job is easier than someone building a company that manufactures a physical product, right? And in some cases, they are developing a product that's physical and then manufacturing it and getting it to consumers. And having done that at Impossible is a really hard job. So we have it a little easier in software. I think the big challenges that we 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 run into are we're introducing a fundamentally new way of operating to an old school industry, and so a lot of our customers aren't they're not the earliest adopters of new technology, and so we need to build a product that's so easy to use that we can show them, look, we've taken away repetitive tasks. You hate at the end of your day updating your CRM, and our CRM is already pre-populated with everyone you could sell to, so it's easier to use. You want to connect with new operators, but there's not tools in the horizontal world that are built for that job. Finding culinary decision makers and reaching out to them and offering samples and managing those samples. And so we of course have built software that chips away at that, but sometimes there can be a challenge in just getting folks to try new things. And really the way we address that is we create good outcomes for our customers, and then we use them as our evangelists.
Okay. So what in real terms would a food manufacturer buy from you? What
Yeah.
physically are you offering them? Is it software
Yeah.
that which they use, or do you provide a service as well as the software?
Yeah, it's pretty standard software. So, they license First Bite, they get to log into the platform. The first thing they see is an index of every potential food service operator updated monthly automatically. They can select and filter those operators and connect with them. They can track those relationships. We plug into their email, so they get this sort of interface that is, it's not all that dissimilar from the horizontal type products like HubSpot or Salesforce, but it's built for the workflows that manufacturers and CPG brands are doing. And so pretty standard licensing fee and and pretty fast to adopt. Usually you can start running campaigns, in a couple hours of work, right? We're able to build a forecast, identify targets, and start to run those campaigns for folks. So the time to value is really fast.
Okay. And is it USA focused or is it global?
Today we're fairly USA focused. We'll be adding sort of, let's call it like English speaking global as our next wave of international. But today we're focused on the US market. It's a massive market in terms of food service, and so we've considered going international, but we actually have a lot of customers in Europe and in Asia that use us to go after this, this massive, greater than $1 trillion food service market in the US, because it's often the most attractive global market no matter where you are.
Okay. It sounds like a great solution. And clearly with Impossible Foods on your CV, you have a good you have good leverage there. You can get you people trust you because they trust the brand and will obviously sort of trust your product. So what would success look like for you in the next 5 years or so for First Bite? What would you like to be achieving at that stage?
Yeah, and that is our DNA. It's, I would say half of the team has comes from the manufacturer world and has sold into food service operators. And so we're building from a place of like what would we have wanted when we were selling, and ultimately, like when I think about 5 years out, it's like that's the fun part, is like we all want to build something bigger than ourselves, and the easiest way to imagine that world is it becomes the status quo for manufacturers and operators to have direct relationships with each other, and can go so far as to transact with each other while still running product through distribution. And so one of the products that we've more recently launched is the ability to create offers and discounts and rebates inside of First Bite and send those to to operators. And those operators, the way these offers work is it says you create terms, and you can buy a product from any distributor, and we watch the order information at the operator level. And if they purchase the manufacturer's product, we send money from the manufacturer, or an incentive from the manufacturer, to the operator. It allows them to transact directly with each other. So the world that I see in 5 years is that this opens up sort of direct relationship and collaboration between manufacturers and operators. And from the perspective of innovative products, that's a really crucial element to getting in front of consumers. But from the perspective of, if you're a manufacturer and you want to grow efficiently and you want to take control of your growth and make investments that you can see an obvious ROI from, that's sort of required. That's just the end state that's going to be required. And so I think that's the thing that, the thing after the thing that we're most excited about is really facilitating those direct connections, without underselling the job that distributors do in last mile of picking up products and dropping them off. I don't want to compete with that. That's a hard business. But I don't like to see the inefficiencies created by manufacturers and operators not able to talk to each other and collaborate.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds very good. I mean, it kind of removes that sort of faceless organization, and if you understand where your food is coming from. But I suppose you not only are you trying to persuade the manufacturers to change their ways, but you're also trying to persuade the food operators to change their ways also, because they are used to dealing with the distributor. So they're going to have to kind of put an extra layer into their process, perhaps.
They're interesting. There's the Bella the Ball, Burger Kings and Starbucks and McDonald's, where everybody's reaching out. And then, when you get down to the, 1,000th largest operator, and then there's another 650,000 commercial food service operators, they're not hearing from folks that much. And so it's interesting. When we look across all of our customers, when any customer, on average customer runs an outbound campaign to connect with a sub 100 unit operator, almost 10% of them reply. And that's just cold, like completely cold, just email. And so to me, that suggests that, they kind of want to be heard from. They want to work with manufacturers. Both sides don't want value caught in the middle. So there's a lot of value to be created from collaboration, and the fact that just at the response step, right, the cold email opportunity, the typical reply rate is 10 or 20x what it is in software, I think is a really good sign that there's a lot of interest on the operator side to collaborate.
Okay. Because they think they can get sort of better value, I suppose. If they go directly to the manufacturer.
Yeah, and I think restaurant operators are like the savviest, scrappiest folks out there, and they're looking for value. They're looking to monetize the audience of they control an audience of people that are loyal to their operations. And so to the extent that they're able to help a manufacturer that has a brand do that, get in front of consumers and make some money off of it, they'll find a way to do that. I think they're always looking for that angle. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to let you go now. Reed, thank you very much for, coming on to Future Foods Interviews. and sharing this very interesting solution. And I'm all about solutions, so it's great to hear, and I'll be following it with great interest.
Alex, yeah, thanks for having me. Firstbite.io or reach out to Reed McCord on LinkedIn if anyone's interested in taking a look at the platform.
Okay.